1 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture.
Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times.
And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
Christmas, 1978. That was the first year you could have a Star Wars Christmas. Oh, you could have had one in 77, but you wouldn't have got much because there was only puzzles and, dip and dot paint, paint sets and paper stuff. It took a year and a half for Star Wars toys to really get rolling. And by the time Christmas 1978 rolled around, that's all we wanted. And I say we as in my entire generation. Oh, I'm sure there were a few kids who wanted, basketball stuff and sports stuff and G.I. Joe if there was any around. There wasn't much G.I. Joe. But for most of us, it was Star Wars stuff, man. That was the first Christmas you could really you could get into it, man. Star Wars was not just something that you saw on the newsstand, because I had the comics, I had magazines, I had the novel, which, for a 7-year-old, I'm never going to sit and read that. But finally, Christmas morning, you wake up bleary-eyed, and you walk out, and oh my God, there's actual Star Wars toys. 12-back carded Darth Vader, Star Destroyer, Death Star Commander, C-3PO, R2-D2, Jawa. I got a whole stack of them. And I got a land speeder. And I got a dewback. And it was the first Christmas I can really remember, because it was like, oh my God, all these amazing toys they exist and they're mine. And not to be left out, my sister got a 12-back Princess Leia. I have a picture of her with it somewhere. I'll try to put that on the page. A picture of her holding a 12-back. You know how much a 12-back Princess Leia is worth? Good condition, well over $1,000 or even higher. And the interesting part about that Princess Leia is that I wanted it. I wanted it very badly. I can remember I would play with my Star Wars figures, and I would, they'd have adventures, and I would have to go and ask Jennifer, my sister, can I have Princess Leia for the adventures? And sometimes she'd have to play along, but that was fine because it meant that the Princess Leia figure came along with her. Other times, she would relinquish it, and I would get Princess Leia for an afternoon, and then it would go back to her. And you know what? It's funny. Out of all those figures, my absolute favorite was the 12-inch Luke, because you could really put him in adventures. But as far as the figures go, the highest prized one was the Princess Leia, the white-gowned Princess Leia with the white vinyl cape and the really thin gun that she came with. It everybody lost 20 minutes after you opened the package. But I didn't have it. Jennifer had it. And I wanted it so bad because Princess Leia was as important a part of Star Wars as Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Chewbacca and Darth Vader. It wasn't just like da-da-da-da-da, oh yeah, and Princess Leia. No, she was right there, front and center. So that toy became very valuable. Now, Jennifer also got the 12-inch Princess Leia with the buns. And I was like, oh, God, I'm going to get that figure someday too. And that one was good because that one really looked like Carrie Fisher. But I can remember those first, probably year and a half playing with those toys. Just having the greatest time. Then when Empire Strikes Back rolled around, they released... Because, in the first line, that's the only Princess Leia you get. White gown Leia, that's it. When Empire came around, you finally got her in her Hoth outfit or her Bespin outfit. And that was it. So, the pickings were slim. And that's weird, again, because because Princess Leia is just as important to the story as the other characters. And I know there was all this weird stigma, like, well, boys won't buy these toys of girls. No, we were buying them. We were buying them big time. Especially, that Bespin Leia is great. Hoth Leia is pretty good, but I always had a special affinity for Bespin Leia for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's because she came with a cape, like the white gown Leia, And when you're a kid, if it comes with anything, it makes it 10 times more special. It's got to come with something. And when Return of the Jedi rolled around, this is the memory I have is so vivid. The first time I saw a full display of Return of the Jedi figures, it was at Kmart. Now, I had seen them a few at this really tiny toy store called Bob's Toys in Bellflower. And I begged my mother to get what I thought was the most important character of the movie, Squidhead, who turned out, when I saw the movie, I couldn't even find him in the movie. But that was because this guy only had a display of a few aliens, and he had an Admiral Akbar. But see, most of us already had Admiral Akbar because he was a mail away when it was titled Revenge of the Jedi. But I remember going to Kmart, and it was not sure what was the occasion. There was something coming up. I think, if I had to guess, my mother had this weird tradition. Maybe you had this in your family too. On my sister's birthday, I would get a gift just so I didn't feel left out. And this was at the time the figures were really hitting the pegs. And I remember finding two figures that just stood out to me. The first was the Biker Scout from Return of the Jedi. And that figure, even to this day, is still my favorite of the Imperial, armored soldier guys. It's something about the helmet I just like. But the other one was Princess Leia, disguised as Boushh, the bounty hunter. And again, I just remember seeing the package, and it had Princess Leia in this really awesome costume with a big pole weapon and a removable helmet. And I just thought, that's the coolest figure ever. And it remains arguably my favorite Return of the Jedi figure because it was the first one I got that I really was attracted to. Like, this is a fun figure to play with because she's got a disguise. I can take the helmet off. And they had tried that with a couple. The Lando has a removable skiff guard helmet. Are there any others with a removable helmet? I don't think so. Eventually, they would come out with Leia in indoor combat poncho with removable helmet, and I remember really liking that figure too. So this whole idea, again, they were like, well, these toys don't sell to boys. They'll sell to boys. They didn't know what they were talking about, and the reason they didn't know what they were talking about was because there wasn't an actress like Carrie Fisher. The way she embodied Princess Leia, Princess Leia wasn't a damsel in distress. Sure, she needed rescuing from the detention block, right? But the minute she gets out, she is in charge. Get this walking carpet out of my way. Did you get a plan for getting in? Didn't you have a plan for getting out? And there's something so striking about that at a time where a lot of the female roles were damsel in distress. They needed rescuing. They needed a man. Princess Leia didn't need a man. Carrie Fisher just portrayed her so strong. And think about this, folks. What were you doing at age 19? I can tell you what I was doing. I was working at Blockbuster Video. I had big-time aspirations. I didn't know how to accomplish any of them. The biggest bravado thing I did at age 19 was I appeared on the hot seat with Wally George, which, that's pretty cool. But a lot of us at 19, we're still just bumming around trying to find ourselves. Who are we? What are we going to become? Carrie Fisher at 19 is Princess Leia. Like, that's the coolest thing ever. Like, Princess Leia. And she didn't know when she took the part that this is going to be the thing that defines her life. Because, if you tell somebody that at the outset, they may not take it, Adam West had aspirations way beyond Batman, but he never got over being Batman. He's always going to be Batman. Burt Ward, Robin, right? A lot of times these characters, it takes a lot of hurdles to break the public's connection with a character like that. And can you think of a bigger connection than Princess Leia? To all the boys, she was this smart, sassy, take charge woman. To all the little girls, she was somebody to look up to. Princess Leia led the rebellion. In the first scene of the movie, she's talking smack to Darth Vader. You know what I mean? That's great. Look at the scene where Tarkin brings her in, and she's just mouthing off to him. The only time she truly loses her control is when it's apparent he is really going to blow up Alderaan. And then she plays her, defenseless and raw, which who wouldn't be? It's a bravado performance for somebody so young. Just bravado performance. And it's indicative of the strength and the character and the take no crap attitude that Carrie Fisher led her life with. Here's a woman born into Hollywood royalty. Everybody, there's going to be a million episodes like this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Born into Hollywood royalty, scrutinized from the day she was born, took Star Wars as a way to show I can be my own person, and then watched as Princess Leia became bigger than she was. Empire Strikes Back, they made her vulnerable in that she falls for the least probable guy in the universe, Han Solo. Everybody just assumed her and Luke would get together. And her and Luke aren't brother and sister until 10 drafts down the line of Return of the Jedi. You know what I mean? When Yoda goes, there is another. They're not talking about Leia. They're talking about a character they were going to create. And instead, George's insatiable need to tie everything up in a bow and to make the Star Wars universe, it's not a family tree, it's a wreath. Everybody's connected. That's how that came about. But we just assumed she'd get with Luke. Luke talks to her through the Force at the end of Empire when he's hanging off the gantry. And instead, she falls for Han Solo, the guy that's, all of us who identified with Luke are screaming like, yeah, he's totally wrong for you. And all the girls are swooning because Harrison Ford is, let's face it, Harrison Ford. 1980 Harrison Ford, right? So we see Princess Leia go through this evolution from tough as nails princess in the first one to strong leader, and then you can see it in her face, why am I falling for this guy in the second one? And then it ends with her telling Han Solo she loves him. Like, that's a huge step, huge risk, and it's played so well because, once again, Carrie Fisher's so damn good as Princess Leia. If you have the Blu-ray, and I had it for a while, you can see the other people who auditioned for the role, and some of them were pretty good. Terry Nunn, Deborah Winger, but nobody had that it that Fisher had. And I can also say it, there's something about that velvet voice, the way she talks. When she says, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, there's something thick about the way she talks that even as a young age, I was like, why am I attracted to that in that way? Girls are supposed to have cooties. When Luke Skywalker goes, who is she? She's beautiful. She's speaking for every little boy in the galaxy. Right? And so then, Lucasfilm had this way of re-releasing the movies. In 79, they re-released Star Wars in theaters. And if you stayed left of the credits, you got a commercial for The Empire Strikes Back. And Empire Strikes Back was re-released in 1982. And I went and saw it because I was like, hang on, they're going to show that if we stick around, we're going to get the trailer. Forget about tagging on a Marvel scene like they do today. Lucasfilm used to reward you with a full trailer, and it was the only place you could see it. And when the credits ended for that re-release of The Empire Strikes Back, I sat there, dun-dun, I'm waiting. Oh my God, is it going to happen? And then coming next summer, Revenge of the Jedi, and there's a quick shot of Princess Leia in the slave outfit, and I was like, what did I just see? What's happening? And then at the end, it said, coming next summer, and there was an audible groan from all the young boys in the audience. We have to wait a whole summer? Oh, So then time marches on, man. And I remember, God, going to see Return of the Jedi. My mother took me the opening weekend, cut in line at the La Mirada Mall Theater, which doesn't even exist anymore. And Return of the Jedi unspools on the screen, right? And we get to see Leia as Boushh, and I was like, oh my God, there's the costume and the helmet, And I'll tell you, I went to the Star Wars 10th anniversary convention in 1987, and the only item I really regret not buying was John Marcos, who made props at the time, had a Boushh helmet, and I just thought it was the coolest design ever. God, they've never made a commercial Boushh helmet, and I would love to have one, right? So she gets captured by Jabba the Hutt, and then there's that scene the next morning where they show her in the metal bikini, and, it's been said a million times. It's been parodied on everything from Friends to whatever. But to be like I was, 11 years old, in that audience, watching Return of the Jedi for the first time, and seeing Princess Leia / Carrie Fisher in a completely different light, as now they were portraying her as a sex object, because that's how Jabba has dressed her, right? We didn't know what to do. These were emotions. We felt like Data when he puts the emotion chip in. What do I do with these emotions? I don't want them. What, you have them. And it's called puberty. And get out of the way, because it's going to steamroll over your life. And it began, for my generation, you can pinpoint where it began. It began watching Return of the Jedi on the big screen. Oh my God. And then the idea that we knew Star Wars was going to be merchandised. So they used to sell these fold-out magazines where it was just a little bit of content, but then you unfolded the whole thing out, and the inside became a poster. They were Star Wars poster magazines. I loved getting these. The first one was the Death Star Trench Run, right? But the Return of the Jedi one was Luke holding Leia as they're about to swing off a Jabba's sail barge, and that hung on my wall till it fell off. That became a symbol of the next chapter in my life. That's so crazy. And then the next year, 1984, Anaheim hosted the World Science Fiction Convention. And I had read about it in Starlog magazine. And there's no internet. The only way you know about these things is to just know about them. And I remember going to my mom early in the summer and going, look, Labor Day weekend, I think that's when it was, they're having this big convention in Anaheim. And I want to go, because everybody who likes Star Wars is going to be there. And at that point, Star Wars was over. It was dead. So the only way to fan the flames and keep things going was what I thought, going to a convention. Why not? And my mother didn't take me seriously. And I made it pretty clear. I need to go to this thing. Please take me. And since I got good grades for the most part, she took me. And the only thing she insisted was that I not go in costume, because I was going to go dressed as Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. And she said, I am not walking around with you, because it's not Halloween. And when we got there, there was about 10 of us that weren't in costume. And I remember looking at my mom going, I should have worn the costume. But two things happened at that convention. I had access to Star Wars collectibles from around the world for the first time. And I picked up an 8x10 of Slave Leia and a couple other things. And I remember like playing it off to my mom, like, yeah, these are just get a couple of Star Wars pictures, get the Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia's slave outfit. It's like when Toad tries to get the pint of Old Harper in American Graffiti. So it's like, I'll take the Greedo, Bosk, Slave Leia, and then maybe a Han Solo. You just slip it in, and you hope she don't notice, and then you realize afterwards, your mom knows everything. You don't get anything by your mom. She knows you're not a little kid anymore, and that you're buying these Slave Leia pictures because you like looking at them, right? And the posters, right? Yes. The big lamentation was that there was no Slave Leia action figure. It would take another, a decade and a half to get that. But there were there were big things at that convention. The first was Carrie Fisher was there with Frank Marshall, the producer. And we snuck in the back of the room, and we got to hear them tell stories about the making of the movie. Now, at this point, I am 11, so Carrie Fisher is 26. Like, younger than young. Imagine 26. At 26, she's completed the Star Wars trilogy, right? And I remember seeing her, it was a big ballroom, but I was like, oh my God, the woman that I just bought all those pictures of is sitting up at the dais. Oh my God. And she was funny, and she was laughing, and she was fidgeting with all the stuff that was on the counter. And that was a big deal to me because when the session ended, we ran up to try to get to her. We couldn't get to her. But I remember my mom going, there's an ashtray on remember those metal ashtrays, like almost like tinfoil they used to put everywhere? They used to be in McDonald's all the time. Stuff that's meant to be thrown away once it's used. There was an unused metal Anaheim Convention Center ashtray, and she goes, I think she was playing with this when she was up there talking, and my mom grabbed it for me, and guess what? I still have it to this day. And I always say, Carrie Fisher touched this. And that's how we connect with the things that we love and the things that influence us. And even though the Star Wars trilogy had ended, Carrie Fisher was still an actress, still working. And I remember following her career, as best as I could, because again, pre-internet, it's hard to follow things. If she's not in, genre pictures, the Starlog magazines aren't going to pick it up. Sometimes they did because it was Carrie Fisher. One Red Shoe, The Man with One Red Shoe, Garbo Talks. There was a whole bunch of movies that she did in the 80s. But I remember going to see The Burbs with Tom Hanks, and she plays the wife. Oh my God, it's Carrie Fisher. And Carrie Fisher, by 1988, 89, was like an old friend. It was like somebody you knew. And that was across the board with the Star Wars people, except Harrison Ford, who went on to become, more famous than anybody. And Harrison Ford, because he shunned Star Wars so much, we wanted to put him on that Han Solo pedestal, and he was on it. But to me, he felt standoffish. He's always sounds bored in interviews. Whereas Mark Hamill was always excited. And he was Luke Skywalker. And he was my hero. And Carrie Fisher. And all the other actors. Dave Prowse. James Earl Jones. Alec Guinness. Because of Star Wars. Because we saw them in these movies. And because we played with them as toys. We felt like we knew them. They felt like friends. You know what I mean? Like I remember watching Murder by Death and seeing Alec Guinness in it and going, oh, there's Alec Guinness. Like I know him. And I don't know him. But Star Wars was such a family and was so, oh God, so important to us that it felt like we were part of it too. You know what I mean? We had our own adventures with Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, Lando Calrissian, Billy D. Williams. You know, I remember going to see Batman and seeing Billy D. Williams like, that's Lando Calrissian, man. Everybody felt like that. Now, Mark Hamill dropped off for a while. But I still would seek out the things that he did, like the Amazing Stories episode called Gather Ye Acorns that I've talked about on the show before. It's my favorite episode of that show. And seeing Carrie Fisher in The Burbs and When Harry Met Sally. And I remember there was a show on NBC called The New Show. And it was a sketch comedy show written by Buck Henry. Buck Henry, one of the funniest men ever. And it was an episode about something to do with Russia, right? And Carrie Fisher was there, and they made her put on a mink bikini. And I just remember, there's no VCRs. I didn't get to record it. I've looked for it on YouTube. It's hard to find. But I remember like watching it going, oh my God, that's Carrie Fisher. It's Princess Leia. Because, you know, she was also in an episode of Laverne and Shirley where they get a job at the Playboy Club, and Carrie Fisher's in a Playgirl, you know, a Playboy bunny outfit. And I know that it seems callous to talk about all these instances where, you know, she was in these skimpy outfits or this and that, but that was only part of it. That was the part that made the young men perk up. And then when she talked, you either know what I'm talking about or you don't. And there was something about the way she talked that was so just her. That thick way she talked. I used to have Star Wars on cassette, you know, the kind where turn the page when R2-D2 beeps. And you could hear Carrie Fisher on that, and sometimes I would just rewind to listen to her. You know, that sounds weird, but, you know, back in the day, that's all we had. It's all we had. And, oh man, when she finally turned to, she wrote novels, Postcards from the Edge. I remember seeing that movie. And then I heard she'd become a script doctor. Since I, you know, fancied myself a writer, I followed that career pretty closely because she was the one they brought in at the very end to fix the movies and punch it up, you know. And you'd go to see a movie and you'd go, okay, that's Carrie. It's hard to give examples because she did so many of them, you know. She punched up the script on Hook. And then if you watch the movie, the couple kissing on the bridge is her and George Lucas. Like, that's bizarre, right? And then she showed up again in the first Austin Powers. You know, she leads the dad and son therapy class, you know, when he does that monologue and she goes, we have to stop, you know, or when she appeared in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back as the nun, you know. I just go back to that almost friends thing, you know, like people you just know. And the thing that goes with that is you don't think they're ever going to leave. And we have all of her amazing body of work, all her great performances, even the Star Wars Holiday Special where she's high as a kite. But you point to it and you go, there's a person, a woman, who never shied away, lived life exactly the way she wanted it, talk about embracing your demons. Carrie Fisher embraced so many demons. She embraced mine, yours, hers. And she battled them so much and came back swinging. You know, God, there's something to that, right? You see people looking up to the wrong people these days. You know, I tell my daughter all the time, she comes in, I go, you've got to demand better role models. The Kardashians, the Biebers, the Cyruses, garbage. Hold Carrie Fisher up. Embraced her mental illness and said, not only am I going to fight it, but I'm going to write something that tells you how to fight it. I remember when she got married to Paul Simon. I was incredibly jealous. He got to marry her. He was only married a year, but for a year, he was married to Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher. Oh my God, I was so jealous of that because it was right around the same exact time that she appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone. And I bought that issue. And then when I went to a carnival, it was a prize when you threw a dart. And I'd never won anything like that before in my life. But I turned to my mom and I said, I am winning that poster. And I threw a dart and I won that poster. It's her on the beach with the Ewoks and Darth Vader. Everybody, it's a famous picture. And Paul Simon got to marry her. You know? And the 13-year-old me was like, he gets to kiss her. Oh my God. Because I didn't, I couldn't tell if there was anything beyond that. But we're at a time now, and seeing her in Force Awakens, as the older General Leia, and then in Rogue One, I'm not a fan of that movie. I'm not a fan of what they did to her in Rogue One. I think she would have been better served not showing her face. Show it in a hologram, because they did the same thing in Star Tours. In the new version of Star Tours, and because it's a hologram, it looks so much better because that hides the fact that it's not her. I bought a Princess Leia cardboard stand-up of Slave Leia, and I had it in my bedroom. This is me as a married man. I had it in my bedroom for a long time. I finally gave it to a friend of mine. But they had there was a moment in time where they embraced the Slave Leia thing. They had a lot of action figure statues. Remember Gentle Giant made a statue that was so revealing, Carrie Fisher made them cover her up. She's like, are you kidding? You got to redo that. You can look that up. That really happened. There's a t-shirt of her choking Jabba. It's very powerful because she's at a point where she's been thrown down, and instead of giving up, she fights back. And they made a t-shirt out of that. You know what? That was the last present my mother ever bought me before she died. I still have it somewhere. There was never any stigma where Princess Leia was concerned. She was, like I said, equal to Luke and Han Solo. And unfortunately, Carrie Fisher led a life where standing up and doing it her way also involved a lot of drugs. And we've watched 2016 make people accountable for all that. We don't know for certain how people went, but certainly David Bowie's drug use and Prince's drug use and George Michael's and Carrie Fisher's. And we lose people. She was only 15 years older than me. There's only 15 years between 1956 and 1971. It sounds like an eternity. 56 to 71. It's only 15 years, folks. I imagine, when you hear something like this, the first thing you think of is we're never going to see what she would have done later in life. It's over. A career just stops. I don't want Disney to digitize her and put her in a million movies. I simply don't. And more importantly, we're going to lose whatever precious words she had, whatever novels she had. Her novel, The Princess Diarist, my friend Jeff did the book signing a month and a half ago. Invited me to go. I didn't go. I didn't know. What do I always say? You have every moment up until you don't. And then it's too late. And then you're out of luck and you're out of time. And she's one of those people you go, it didn't even occur to me that we could lose someone that important in my childhood, my life, who I am as a person. You just don't think about it. First, because it's, you don't want to. And second, because she's so young. And you then extrapolate it even further. What if somebody came up to you and said, you're going to die at 60. You have X number of years left. What would you do with them? What would you do with them? My mother died at age 54. What would I do if I knew that was my expiration date? But you know, Carrie Fisher lived every day to the fullest. You know, she traveled around with her dog. She wrote amazing books. She was respected. And time just ran out. It hurts, man. It hurts. It really does. And I'm not saying anything that a billion Star Wars fans the world over didn't already say. But thankfully we had her for as long as we did. And she was able to give us 4.5, I'll give Rogue One a half, Star Wars movies. I can't imagine what my childhood would have been like without Star Wars. Without Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Princess Leia. And I would give anything to have that 12-back Princess Leia that my sister had. Because now it has a different meaning. Now it's not just a character on the screen. It's a person. It's a real person who inspired a generation. You know? Inspired a generation of little boys and little girls to look to the stars. And you can be whatever you want to be. Oh, it's a bummer to have it, you know. I knew this. I knew this show was coming. I put it off day after day. I didn't want to do it. I've had more fun with it than I think I thought I was going to. But in the end, you have to say goodbye. You have to raise a glass, and you have to say thank you. Thank you, Carrie Fisher, for embodying Princess Leia unlike anybody would have ever done, and creating a cinematic character that will live forever. And novels that will live forever. That, my friends, is how you leave your mark. You know? And then her mom, Debbie Reynolds, sadly died just right after her. It's incredibly tragic. You know, I can't imagine what that family is going through right now. I don't want to. It's unthinkable. But two people who had a bond like that are now together, and that's great. You know, and if you believe in Star Wars the way I do, you want to believe. You know, you want to believe that the Force is real, and that if you believe in it enough, you know, forget midi-chlorians. It's about faith. He switched off his targeting computer. Luke, what happened? I'm okay. You know, the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. Hey, here's to Carrie Fisher. All we can say is thank you, and may the Force be with you, always. I'm Jeff Tucker, and this is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?